Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Hey, Miguel Irati, Mike Davis, Lights Out Podcast, Chris Lytle about to join us, waiting in the wings. And we got another old school deep dive 50 Fight Club guy, like you wouldn't believe. Actually, older school than Chris. Mike, take it away. Who we got?
We got Dave Menne. So The thing about Dave is he the first 185-pound UFC world champion. We're concentrating on the beginning of his career and just kind of like walking him up to that point. And we hope to revisit him later on with the second portion of his career. The guy's an absolute living legend and incredibly interesting. And you know what? There isn't a lot of footage that exists on his fights. So like of the early fights. So I grabbed what I could and then I made phone calls on the other ones. So in terms of like research, Miguel, I honestly thought this thing was gonna like bring me to the 30, 40 hour mark, but it was more like 16. It wasn't that bad. In regards to everybody that we go through, it was just mostly phone calls. It was about 16 hours. So, I mean, you give me a guy that only takes 16 hours of research, I could do like 4 of those a week.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to watch the old fights too with Dave. He's such an old school guy. The thing about Dave is he's got a reputation too as being quiet, like not a big talker. But I think we're gonna get real answers out of him too. I think he's going to be a dude that doesn't have like answers prepared for certain questions that he always faces and stuff. I think he's been a recluse. I think it's a real treat that he gave us this time and stuff. So
I agree. And then on top of that, guys, we're not asking for money. We're not asking for any of that. All we're asking for is a like, share, subscribe, or like if you're on iTunes, you guys can write anything you want in the reviews. We don't even care. Like we legitimately don't care what you write there. But what we do care is that 5 stars. If you give 5 stars, it helps us with our algorithms. And by doing that, it's literally like giving us money. It's taking 2 seconds out of your time to help us out. I put 16 hours into this interview. If you guys can give Miguel and I just 2 seconds of your time and give us a 5-star review, it'd be awesome. We'd really appreciate it. So
or comment, any comment,
comment,
right answer, and knock them out. And at the end of the day, you know, Dave Menne is our 51st interview, and you know, we'd like to be here 100 more interviews down the line. So keep us in mind. And hey, first 185-pound champion in the UFC's history, Dave Menne, coming aboard.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for participating, listening, whatever you guys do. So thank you. Another deep dive here. Very excited about this one. I have somebody with me today who has actually been doing this sport longer than me. Hard to believe. I know. I started in like middle of 1998. Not sure we're going to find out when he started, but it was before me. I know that. Former champ of many different organizations. And unfortunately, I was able to fight this gentleman once, but it was a great fighter. And Dave Menne. Dave, how the hell are you, brother?
Doing well, and you?
I'm doing good, man. Just enjoying life right now. So
you still in Indiana?
I still am, man. I've been here for pretty much my whole life. I've been on the fire department now 20 years. So yeah, it's been a long time.
Good job, Dave. It definitely is nice to meet you again. You know, we go a little bit further back, you know, to the hook and shoot days and stuff. So I'm very eager to introduce you. I used a similar intro for somebody, but it really applies to you. You know, some guys travel a path less traveled, look for a path less traveled, right? But that's not Dave Menne. Dave Menne blazed his own path. That's his own, you know, he just went down his own path and did it because, you know, when Chris says you're talking about a guy who was fighting before him, to me, he was one of the first guys that was like a mixed martial artist, like you can really consider that even before the term was coined, which the submission, stand up, and the combination game. Like I think, you know, even predates Jeremy Horn as a legend in terms of technique in my book. So Dave Menne, thank you very much for joining us. First 185-pound UFC champion. I don't even think we'll get to that today, right, Mike?
No. So today what we're going to do, Dave, with you is we're going to concentrate on your pre-UFC. And here, the pre-UFC stuff is a lot harder to find. And it's a lot harder to find because there's not a lot out there on it. So a lot of our interviews, we kind of like to bounce back and forth. But, Chris and Miguel, we kind of like to focus on that no-holds-barred era.
And there's a lot of Yankee stuff that happened back in the day, obviously. It happens a lot of promotions now, but I mean, there's also the reality. There's judges that aren't judges and, all sorts of weird things going on. So
good.
Now, Dave, do you have a lot of fights that aren't even on your record? I know for myself, I probably had 10 to 15 fights that never fun.
There's a decent amount that would have been like pre-Monty, that would have been basically not much farther off from like in a ring or like a tournament of tough guys, basically.
In essence, 1 year career is crazy with the amount of fights that you had. Obviously, 50 Fight Club member, Chris.
Oh yeah.
But you really didn't have a lot of soft fights, and the ones you did have, you didn't know they were soft until later on, because these people were kind of like at the beginning of their soft career, so to say. And Miguel had mentioned Hook and Shoot. Obviously, that's where you guys had first met and hooked up. On April 4th, 1997, he fought in Evansville, Indiana. Hook and Shoot won the very first Hook and Shoot.
Mm-hmm.
How many fights do you think you had before this that are not on record?
8 to 10. So.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Where were those fights at?
Yeah.
It was at a club.
Or at what state? I mean, was it in Minnesota?
It was in Minnesota, yeah. It wouldn't have been sanctioned, though. It would not have been entirely legal at the time.
So this was kind of like an underground circuit at this time. The internet really wasn't what it is today. So in order to get involved with Hook and Shoot 1, you're in Minnesota. This is southern tip of Indiana. How does that connection happen?
Miguel, I mean, maybe in the process, I don't know if Greg, because I was training at that point, I think at Greg's. So I don't know if that actually might have came through Renken, because I ran into Renken at the Cold House fights. And then after running into him there, he started training at the academy. And I think he was trying to find the fights in different places. So it could have been through him, or it could have been through Greg, in all honesty. So, because at that point, I was looking at doing, before the Cold House fights and before Hook and Shoot, I was looking to do some leg kick fights around. I think I did one in Milwaukee, and ended up fighting Golden Glove boxing champion from New York, which wasn't a good idea, but I survived. I did not win. But I think at that point, I don't even think I had sparred yet. I just, and it was with leg pads, and not a good idea, but I lived through it.
So Dave, I usually like to ask this beforehand, but I forgot. But can you give us a little bit about your background? Like, what got you into this? Were you a wrestler? Were you a kickboxer? What was your athletic background, and what got you into fighting?
I did some Taekwondo, like really young, and then I got into wrestling, and I wrestled into high school, state finals, team 1 state. I was recruited by the U and a few other places, and I ended up walking on in Iowa for a few years.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow, I did not know that. Wow.
I did not start there, so that's would be one caveat. I did beat some decent people in some opens, starters, I believe 1 All-American, possibly, if I recall, and a couple starters. But towards the end of it, my arm was pretty much wrecked, and I ended up traveling around the country for some time. So
nice.
And how'd you land in Minneapolis?
I was originally from Minneapolis, but I think after college I ended up in New York for a little while, and then I ended up in Utah, and then I ended up in Santa Fe, and then I ended up back in Minneapolis.
I got you.
So I was I ended up working in Utah for a little while, in Salt Lake City. Then I went down to first place I probably really started training was in New Mexico. Somebody that one of my brothers knew, and it was actually one of the original Dog Brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with them. So it was they did the full contact stick fighting and stuff.
Okay.
yeah.
I do remember them.
So I stayed not for a long period of time, but I trained a little Muay Thai with him. And then
Wow.
They were making a run at like they had a big PR push for a minute. Like they were trying to get like the big next sport was that stick fighting.
Yeah, they were trying to get it. They were trying to like do a segue between that and the UFC. I'd lost contact with them, and I wasn't close. I mean, great people, but we weren't talking all the time. My brother knew them better than I did, I recall that hearing that they were trying to get that approved on one of the original UFCs, but there's no way the insurance would have covered it.
So Chris,
Right.
essentially they had like a mesh helmet, like a weave basket, and they had sticks, and they just beat the crap out of each other like on the beach.
I love it.
Kind of like bum fights, but
A little different.
I don't know.
So Dave, you brought up a couple
90s.
of times. Dave, you brought up a couple of times the Cold House fights. What can you tell us a little bit about that, or is that messing you up, Mike, or how's this work?
No, if I remember correctly, he came to Hook and Shoot with those fights on there. I thought they were misdated on Sherdog and the records and stuff, but they aren't even on his official record. So take us through what is the Cold House fights.
Yeah, it was just a group of hooligans that ended up in the middle of Wisconsin. I believe it was supposed to be at a gymnasium, and then eventually got stopped, or we were told it was originally at a gymnasium, and they decided to ferry us to this Cold House in the middle of Wisconsin. And that's all I remember is it was cold. And I guess Matamoros was there at the time fighting, and John Renken and a few other people. And I just remember getting ready and taking my socks off because I'd been doing jiu-jitsu for a little while. So I was planning on, trying to submit the person, right? And I remember getting started and being like, I hope this like goes like we start quick, and I'm going to finish this quick because my feet are freezing. So that's my predominant memory. We had people in front of the windows and the radiators, so no one went flying through the windows. So
was there any crowd there? Was there any fans, or was this guys fighting?
There was a crowd of people watching. Yeah, the crowd of people were in front of the windows and the radiators and stuff, making sure no one went through anything. So it was obviously.
Was there cash prizes?
What's up?
Was there a cash prize?
I don't think there was much for cash. No, maybe a little bit. It was long ago. Wouldn't have been much. $50, travel money, gas, hamburger.
Who was the promoter?
I think it was Morris or something. So.
Henry Matamoros. There you go. That's why you love that guy so much.
No, it was Morris.
Henry
Morris.
was there. Henry fought. I know Henry's end of this story was that somewhere in there was an 8-man tournament where Henry and Renken were in there, and I thought that David won the tournament, but
I wasn't in the tournament.
Oh, okay, but there was a tournament that day.
I might have been in the tournament actually, but in a different one. I wasn't in Henry's and Renken's.
Oh, okay, I got you. So,
I'm trying to even remember how many people I fought. If it was 1 or 2 or 3, it was.
It was cold.
The Cold House. Cold House fights. I love it.
I remember it was cold. Yeah, I mean it was. Yeah, it was.
Was this like on carpet or was there a mat?
I think it was a hard floor, man. A wood floor.
This is someone's basement.
No, it was on the main floor, but it was like early 1900s, like farmhouse basically.
Oh man.
Did you have to like move the furniture out of the way?
No, it was abandoned.
It was a bit. Oh. Okay, fair enough.
Either someone was selling it, or someone knew someone, or we broke in. I didn't break in. They told us to go there, so that I was going to get called off, and obviously I was young and dumb and whatever. So,
See, this is even more old school than me. I love it.
Yeah. Well, the journey that I have starts on April 4th, 1997. The original hook and shoot, the very first hook and shoot that ever took place. And you fought in a pancrase tournament, but it was an 8-man pancrase tournament.
Yeah.
Do you recall it?
Yeah, I recall it. I remember landing some good knees and some kicks and grappling. I believe I dominated pretty well. In all honesty.
At this time, like jiu-jitsu here in the United States was not at a very high level. You had mentioned earlier you worked out with Greg. I'm assuming you meant Greg Jackson.
No, Nelson.
Greg Nelson. I apologize. Greg Nelson, famed Pedro Sauer black belt. One of the first in the country. Chris, I apologize for that. You win this tournament. You start with Dwayne Bressinger, and you win by armbar at 237. You go on to Adam Fisher, which is your second fight listed. You win by rear naked choke. And in the third fight, the finals, you defeat Sean Kultas, again by armbar. Now, was Greg Nelson in your corner at this time?
I think Renken might have been cornering me, honestly, because we traveled down there together because he was going to fight the next day. So
he fought in a tournament the very next day. Yes.
Yeah, I think did he fight? He fought the big heavyweight guy in the finals, I think, or towards the finals. There was
I think he lost in the finals.
Yeah, it was some big guy. So,
Frank Amalfitano.
Yeah, but no, and then the little I guess it'd be an insult. The hairy little guy. The personality. Didn't he win?
Phil Straffolino.
Yeah.
Yeah, Phil Straffolino is one of those little hook and shoot legend guys. But
he was funny. He was tough but a quirky dude. So.
Yeah, definitely one of those.
The amazing thing about Phil Straffolino's career is that he ends it at 3-5, and all three of his wins came in a tournament, including against John Renken. So he never picked up another win after that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not like he was going to probably get to strike very well. So I think when you started to get more people that understood, I'd have to look at who he fought, and obviously he should have probably had
we struck him in. His last fight was Aaron Riley, and I think
a good idea.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is shows there. He was a limited grappler, but he was exciting as hell.
He was a limited grappler, and he was tough, but in that, you can't perceive him necessarily becoming a high-level striker just by body type and his nature, if it makes any sense. Not that I knew him very well, but just by the small interactions I had and watching him move, it would have taken some time to get that out of him. So,
and plus, he's winning tournaments a bit. I bet after that, he probably fought tough guys every time. You know what I mean? He wins tournament like throwing him in tough.
Rankin's tough.
So he probably getting easy fights.
Yeah. So,
he fought a 300-pounder for us too in a fight that he just said, "All right, I'll do it," like that day, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So definitely an hook and shoot legend. Thanks, Dave. Your fight though was Tim Wills, and I feel. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, yeah. So you gave those 3 fights, and in true, I mean, Miguel, were you involved with hook and shoot at this time?
No, I wasn't, and I want to make a minor correction. The first real hook and shoot was May of '96 when Gary Myers fought and Geza Kalman fought. Nick Starks fought Gary Myers. But this one is called Hook and Shoot 1, Absolute Fighting 1.
You're right.
So a lot of people do that. But just for the record, that one predated it. But this was a back-to-back night. So he fought a pancrase tournament Friday night, and that was in Pride of the War Memorial that we usually booked. And then is the legendary night in the wood panels dojo, where
whatever his name's Jim or
Scott Sullivan.
Yeah,
it's probably Scott Sullivan's gym. So
with Scott Sullivan's gym, that was April 5th, and on that show you fought Tim Willis, where you got a knockout. So Chris, we're talking about in one weekend The guy fights an 8-man tournament one day, and then the next day signs up and fights one more time.
I mean,
were you kind of pressured into this, or were you just not banged up from the tournament?
I mean, they were decent fights, but I think most of them, I wasn't banged up that much, and I felt like, okay, let's try it. Let's keep going, I guess. So whatever. I can't say I was. I can't say I always made the best decision. So I mean, like if we go way forward, we're now way forward, mid forward. I fought the Kuwait tournament, 8-man tournament, one of the tougher tournaments, ever by some people's standards. And then I had 3 days, basically 3 days getting home. So the 8th to the 11th or 12th. And then I flew out the 16th for a no weight class tournament in Tokyo and fought on the 24th again. So with my ribs were subluxed in my hand, I couldn't close, I think probably till the day of the fight. I still couldn't close my hand. Basically the day of the fight with adrenaline, I was able to close my hand and fight. Well, I was still going to fight, but I couldn't close on the airplane ride. I still couldn't comfortably close my hand.
I'm going to gamble that between Kuwait and Tokyo, you made more money than in Evansville.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, do you remember, and this is obviously way back, do you remember the fight purse for that early pancrase tournament that you did?
You throw Miguel on blast, aren't you, Mike? That's real cool.
It's before Miguel.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. I'm sorry, you're right.
Yeah, I think it was travel money, basically. So
some
Cheetos.
Did you get a belt? Did you get a belt? Because that was
I got a belt.
Yeah, that's typically what Jeff would do with the pancrase is offer a belt, and that actually attracts a lot of people too. So
you're not kidding.
So yeah, I got a belt, and I might have got some travel money and some food. I can't.
A hotel.
And I think I got some in a hotel maybe, and I got some money. I think for the fight the next day. Maybe that's why I fought. Pay for subway on the way home.
That's fantastic. All right, so it's April 5th, 1997, and Dave, some would wonder about your mental capacity at this time because you go right into Extreme Challenge 5, where you fight another 4-man tournament on April 18th, 1997, which is like a couple weeks later.
Yeah,
so you're putting about a year's worth of mileage on you in just a couple weeks time.
Yeah. I have a tendency not to make good decisions sometimes.
But you know what? Back then, especially, a lot of these fights, you weren't taking any damage. You were dominating, and the body was young. I mean, I remember getting hurt all the time, and it wouldn't heal up quick and even think about it. And like we looked at my stuff, I was fighting every 3 weeks too. So it just feels like back then that's what you did. You just fought all the time. It wasn't like, obviously these people were doing it. We were doing it for fun and the love of the sport because there wasn't much money in it. So you just do it because it's something you enjoyed to do. You could tell.
Well,
and experience, getting the experience and trying to, I guess, get better. So there's only one way to get better is to do it. So.
Yep.
So, what I wanted to ask you, Dave, is, and I think you kind of, you're kind of like too classy to say it, but the truth is at HOOKSHOOT, you were a class above that competition. All 4 guys, really.
Yeah,
although, you're logging competition, but as Mike pointed out, the Extreme Challenge, this was no longer the case. Talk about, when you realized that, or how, how that played into, how you felt when you had to step up there. Because now LaVerne Clark and Shonie Carter in the same tournament, that's really no joke.
Yeah, I mean, LaVerne is a pro. I mean, I think he was doing some pro boxing and a state champion. Obviously, he went on to other people didn't know them because of, some of his wins. And being in the UFC, wins over John Lewis, and a few other people. So yeah, I mean and he hits hard. So but he has a weakness in submission. So, but it's obviously considerably step up in competition all of a sudden because now you're dealing with people that have been fighting somewhat professionally. So,
okay. So with LaVerne Clark, was there even weigh-ins for this fight?
Yeah, I weighed in.
And
So
was this your,
I always made weight, and I always weighed in. This is on me. So I would
Now-
imagine there were weigh-ins. I've heard of some shenanigans here and there about stuff, but I weighed in, yeah. And
So
everyone's
what weight
around.
was this at?
Everyone would have been at that weight or around that weight. That was 170. So
Okay.
so
and this was, we just did a deep dive with Monty on this actual event because it is a legendary event. And I know you rematched Shonie Carter later on, but you fight LaVerne Clark, you win by triangle. Not an easy fight, obviously, future UFC veteran. And then you wind up in the finals against Shonie Clark where you lose the decision. Is this the first time you had ever lost a match?
Yeah, that would be the first time I lost a match in mixed martial arts or NHB, I guess. So it was a split decision loss. And I think Horn was the judge that gave me the decision. So Jeremy Horn, I believe, was one of the judges. So it was, if I recall, back and forth. I predominantly went through submissions, and Shonie wriggled out of them back and forth, had position. I think Horn, obviously, probably scored higher for the submission attempts because he had to try to force himself out. And the other judges scored the other way. It's a long time ago. And maybe that could possibly be wrong, or Horn could at some point told me I judged you winning, but I believe he was a judge at that. So
Gotcha. That makes sense.
And his upper body throws and his control, it's so deceiving. It's not something you're normally used to seeing in a normal wrestling gym.
Yeah, I mean, that was a little bit ago. It would have been, and I would have been not concerned. I would have probably wanted to go down, in all honesty, at that time, because I just come off the hook and shoot and armbarred everybody. So I think I was predominantly going for submissions. I would have been able to out wrestle LaVerne, and I got LaVerne in a triangle. So
LaVerne hit like a Mack truck, though. He is just his hands were special in the early days of MMA.
Yeah. Yeah, he was, and he was long, hit hard. So, but it's a little bit ago. I think I might have had the fight at some point. So I just remember transitioning a lot, as far as I recall, transitioning a lot in between arm bars, triangles, and various other attempts, and it kind of going back and forth. And like I said, I think Horn was the judge. Horn was one of the judges. I can't comment on the other two. So,
if you look into Shonie's, especially earlier in his career, the dude was extremely tough to submit. Ornai, he was just always there. I mean, he was extremely. It wasn't until later in his career when he got over with that he was able to get submitted. But man, that guy is able to get out of a lot of stuff. He was just, I think, way ahead of his time. He was just very tough to finish.
Yeah, it was very tough to finish, and he stayed on the outside when he was striking. So he stayed on the outside. I don't know necessarily overly committed. So he didn't always hit the hardest. I don't know, I would say, but he understood range well. So,
and he knew how to breathe, and he was always in shape. He was always in shape, Shonie Carter. Yeah. He had Bob Shermer in his corner. We just interviewed him. I think by the time this airs, it already, be on our playlist. But yeah, he had mentioned it was just a dog fight. He said it was probably his hardest fight to date. That's in the top three. That fight between yourself and him. So your record online is probably off on this because you're kind of ravenous in the way you're taking fights. So the next fight online that I could find, so that was April 18th of 97. And then February 27th of 98, you show up in an Extreme Challenge again.
Okay.
Was there anything in between there?
I don't possibly. So I'd have to sit down more and think about it, in all honesty. So probably not, though. So I don't think so.
Okay.
After the Shonie loss, you might have taken some time off or stuck to, by Greg Nelson for technique, or like how did what
Yeah, I
was
might
the
have just started training. I think actually, I think I ended up in North Carolina. So yeah,
Okay.
I ended up in North Carolina after that. So I was living in Raleigh-Durham for a little while. So,
Okay, good training there, or were you kind of on your own?
I was looking for a jiu-jitsu place and prep training a little bit on my own. So and then eventually I ended up however long, about the time, probably a couple months before the next fight would have, I would have probably been back in Minnesota for about 4 months, but I had only been training maybe for just a little bit, and I fought again.
Okay, so you took some time off. Gotcha.
So there's like an MMA footnote. February 27th, 1998, Extreme Challenge. Once again, you're with Monty Cox. And I'm assuming Monty is not managing you at this point because he keeps feeding you wolves. You fight Jesse Jones, who never made it to the UFC. But if you look at his record, you're like, I think if the guy would have fought one more fight, it probably would have been in the UFC. TJ Thompson is also the ring announcer. He's the promoter for Super Brawl. A lot of MMA history happening right there between yourself, Monty, Jones, and TJ Thompson all in one building.
Yeah. So yeah, I fought Jones. I think that would probably be my only loss by submission ever. And that.
Jones was special.
That was in Myers. Gary Myers fought the headline fight, I think, for that.
Okay.
If I recall right. So,
Let me.
But I can't. I don't recall exactly. It was Gary Myers' hometown, wasn't it, or something? I think, if I can recall right. So.
Yeah. It's in Muncie, Indiana, and Gary was the main events against Nathan Allen. Dan Severn fought on that card.
Wow.
Jeremy Ford fought Noe Hernandez. So Joe Pardo, Brad Kohler.
Man.
And if we come full circle with Jeremy Horn, Jesse Jones was one of his students, and or I shouldn't say students, he was his training partner, and he was out of Omaha, Nebraska. There was a brief stand-up exchange between the two of you before you got the takedown, and after a brief exchange on the ground, you tend to back out and wave, Jones up. He butt scoots. You dive in, triangle armbar. Yeah, I mean, it was, you kind of dove into a submission.
Dove into a submission, if I recall right, he was a little slipperier than normal. So,
well, if he's training with Jeremy Horn, he's probably got a pretty good roadmap in front of him in regards to how to travel.
Are you talking about some type of lotion or something?
That's what I'm thinking. There's a little more of a slickness there. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think he had a little bit of lotion on, if I recall correctly. So
was I thinking? So a lot of times, when that was very interesting. You said, you had a lot of fights, and that was earlier in your career, but you got submitted, and that was the last time. So did you really, when you have a fight like that, a lot of times, you learn, and you're like, okay, now to me, when I lose, I learn way better than if I win. If I win, I'm the best fighter ever. When I lose, I'm like, what went wrong? Did you obviously took that and you took it to heart? You're like, I'm not going to get submitted again. Did you really dedicate yourself to that, or how'd that go afterwards?
I mean, I would say it would have been a couple more fights, and I would have dedicated myself more to the process of training in jiu-jitsu, but I was continually learning, and typically I'm going to try to do the best I can at whatever I'm doing, if that makes any sense. So I guess that would have lit the fire under me to learn more, and something I didn't expect at the time. And I don't know exactly how much longer later, but I ended up rematching him in his hometown how many years later. So
that's just very impressive. The number of the guys you fought, just to get submitted way back then and be like, nope, and never happened again. It's very impressive.
I think it was close to like 20. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, even training, I think it was like 20 years. So,
Yeah, right. So in essence, you're looking at a future UFC, well, a future world champion in Dave Menne. He's got 2 losses in a row. Just been submitted for his first time ever in his career. Only in his career.
Yeah.
April 4th, 1998, you fight at Wisconsin Valley Tudo. Chris, his next opponent, another 50 Fight Club member, Adrian Serrano.
Oh, geez.
So
Experience. I didn't have experience back then.
and that's Pancrase.
And he picks up his 3rd loss.
Well, kind of, maybe.
You feel like you won?
It's a 3rd loss in his hometown, and half the crowd booed. So
wow. So you felt like you won the fight?
Yeah. So yeah.
Was that Duke Rufus on the promotion?
It was Duke Rufus, and I don't think actually even Rufus was happy about the decision, in all honesty. But
really,
but right around this time, Rufus was publicly bashing mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
He wasn't super happy about it, but I think it was about getting butts people in the things. And I had fought for him twice in leg kick fights. So I had.
That's what it probably was. It was probably a combined event. Yeah.
It was mostly Thai boxing, and we were add-ons basically. So he had the people that he flew in from, and some of his instructors were from Thailand, and he had some of his top people that were fighting Thai boxing. So it was a mixed event, and then there was the Pancrase open hand, there was open hand slaps, because that's what I ended up fighting Henry with. When I fought Henry, there was open hands to the feet.
So Adrian's like a really flashy guy. You know, he doesn't have one girl with him. He's got 2. He's wearing a bright pink, bright yellow shirt. He's one of those guys that it's him in the audience just pretty much by the way he dresses at this time. And, you two, I mean, you're a real mellow, easy guy. You guys were almost like opposites, like from a 3rd person point of view. Like, in my opinion, you guys couldn't see more.
I got along with Adrian. I don't know how he was on his, we didn't kick it, so I don't know. So, but, that's, I ran into him at fights a few times, and that was about it. We had couple of different decent conversations, but I didn't see that side of him, so I can't comment.
Okay.
Let me ask you though, too. Out of respect, Chris mentioned you predate him. Adrian's a guy who had a lot more fights than you at that point.
Yeah.
But he also has a little bit of a pro wrestling aspect, and there are times where MMA, he I don't know if he trained 7 days a week MMA kind of thing. I think it was just part of the total package with him. Did you have respect for him? Why don't you talk a little bit about Adrian Serrano circa 98?
Yeah, I mean, he had if I recall right, he had good position. I mean, obviously, he had a deficit for striking, but as far as boxing, this was open-handed, so, and it was in the ring. But he was good at holding and getting position, and working the fight, if I recall correctly. I didn't see tons of his fights, but he had an impressive record in a lot of fights.
For sure. He commanded respect.
And I think he had a lot. He came from judo, didn't he? Have some.
Yeah, he had a judo background.
So, but so he had some decent position, understood submissions, and understood how to early on probably maintain the fight. And he was a hell of a lot bigger than me. I mean, what was Adrian, 185, 90?
Yeah.
I was 155 pounder right now. So, I mean, or less, maybe 155, something like that. So that's quite a bit weight difference too.
So we had Monty on like a couple episodes ago, and we talked about some of the classic extreme challenges. And this is one of the other events that we talked to him about involving yourself, Extreme Challenge 20. It was a title fight, co-main event against Shonie Carter. And this is one of those fights where it's worth the price of Fight Pass just to go watch. The type of shape that yourself was in and Shonie was in, and the way you guys went to war, it's a fight that's about 10 years ahead of its time when you watch it. It's incredible.
And we're fighting on the slip and slide.
Literally. Is it outdoors?
It was outside, and it was 100% humidity, and it wasn't canvas. It was like the boat tarps. So like pressing in or pushing off on stuff. So yeah, I mean, I imagine that probably added. I know they wiped it. I remember, if I recall, they were wiping it down in between fights, but it was on top of that being 20, I think was 20 minutes straight fight, or maybe 15 or 5-minute overtime.
That's what it was.
I think it was 100% humidity or close to it. So yeah, that added.
I couldn't believe the shape that the two of you were in, and it's an extreme challenge title fight. So you got a guy from the west side of Chicago, Shonie Carter, and yourself from Minnesota, the St. Paul area, and it's in Davenport, Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, it's a historic event. And Miguel, I don't know if you recall, the headline was Pat Miletich versus Dan Severn.
Mm-hmm. Dave, what can you tell us backstage there? What was anything weird going on there, or anything with Severn and Becky Levi?
Oh man, I wouldn't have been. I know Becky had quite a reputation from what I heard, so that's all I know. So I didn't deal with much of it, and I was doing my own thing. So I think at that point, Monty might have been Monty was managing me at that point, possibly, or coming close to it. And then, yeah, he would have been probably managed me at that point. But I don't know. I know that Becky, from my understanding, had somewhat of a reputation, but I have no idea of any of the behind the scenes stuff.
So
keeping to myself.
Did you hear her going into the Miletich locker room stating that Monty agreed to change the rules, no punching to the face between he and Severn? You weren't privy to any of that.
No, I wouldn't have been privy to that. I would, like, my relationship as far as being closer to Pat and Monty and knowing their stuff would have been a little bit later on. So I wouldn't have known that.
So you only heard about that afterwards. Okay. All right.
I've heard about it afterwards, but I wouldn't have. I could neither confirm nor deny.
Monty confirmed.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so that went on, and I remember it being obviously back and forth, and then being tired afterwards. And I think Shonie good. I think they had to take an. I think they took an ambulance. I think he ended up actually kicking him, and he ended. From what I was told, he was bruised his kidneys. One of the kicks.
Ooh, wow.
So
wow.
That's what I was told. I was told through the grapevine, and then Monty in the process a couple of weeks. I think he was supposed to do this like a month later or 2 weeks or a month later was supposed to do a Sandshoe tournament in China. And I think Monty asked if I wanted to do the tournament because he didn't know if Shonie was going to be able to do it. Shonie ended up doing it, but I said fine. I would, yeah, sure.
Yeah, we talked to Shonie a couple episodes ago, and he pretty much just said he gave it his all. Like and you know, to his credit, that's his best win. He's got to win over a world champion.
That wasn't a win.
That was a draw this time.
Oh, it was a draw. Well, he kept the title. Well, wait a minute. He's got to win, just not this one. I apologize.
Yeah.
Still Shonie's best win.
Yeah.
From Chicago. Sorry.
It would have been there was no judges allowed. I think.
So if it went the distance, it was going to be a draw.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you feel? Do you feel like you would have won the fight, or he would have? What do you think? Just back and forth, it'd probably. What do you think?
I think they've got it. They've got it.
You think so?
As far as the power of the strikes, the combinations, and me hitting him and me pushing forward, if by the rules that Monty explains early on, if it's scored that way, I win the fight. It's by damage done. I bruised his kidneys and I hit him more and I hit him harder. He got some positional stuff, but outside of that, more of the scoring blows would have been mine, but in my remembrance of it. So, but you know,
I agree with that.
It was a good scrap.
I'm a firm believer that whoever's doing the most damage is winning the fight. And that's what I always talk to people. And that's, the judges, that's what they say is the number one criteria. If that's not happening, then position comes into play. But position's never taken over damn money. And that's what they say they judge on.
Yeah. So I felt like I was getting cleaner hits and I was hitting harder. It would have, like I said, it would have probably been maybe been a less entertaining fight if it would have been so damn slippery.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But it was, it added to the, I guess the memories of the ordeal.
Ordeal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how much of a raise did you get from the first fight to this fight from Monty? How much did you get out of the big guy?
Fuck, no, yeah, I don't know. Pat on the back. I can't remember.
I paid him.
Yeah.
Monty gets a piece of this, so he's probably getting a lot more now.
It might have been like 500 or grand. I don't know, something like that.
But that really was the paying rate back then. Like it was. I mean,
could have been less, but probably because it was a higher level fight and whatever, it would have been around that. So, I mean, I know the crowd was pretty
fired.
So
they were, man. It sounded like you were in a stadium. Like there's a level of education that came with time with the live audience. And dude, that audience, man, they got a treat. They got a treat that night for sure, for sure. And it's unfortunate it ended up with like such a turd for a main event with Dan Severn kind of passing the ball like that. But you went from there to Extreme Challenge 21, where you also, this is another one of these things that we talked to Monty Cox about in our interview, a famous 8-man tournament. Your first fight was against Adam Johnson. Guillotine, round one. Greg Nelson's in your corner, a very young Greg Nelson, I might add. And in your second fight, this is incredible. You got two future world champions meeting in the quarterfinals when you fought Matt Hughes.
Yeah. And that's Matt's early part of his career. I know he was a high-level All-American wrestler. And I think at that point, quite a bit, but I would say he was quite a bit more stacked than me or bigger than me at that point in his career. So I had more experience. My and part of it would be bad strategy or not. I had no intention to ever try to stop a takedown, whether I could have or not, if that makes any sense. My plan was to concentrate predominantly and only on submissions and save my energy for that. In retrospect, that could have been a bad idea. It probably was because he obviously was considerably, once you get to the fact that he's quite a bit bigger in his leverage and his strengths, maybe I should have tried a little harder to stay up. Matt's, his wrestling was high level, especially for MMA. So whether it could have or not, but the aspect of it is I just never had any intention to really try to stop a takedown. So very much.
So what happens is Matt gets several slams and Dave was mounting a heroic defense and it went the full 15 minutes. And in the last 90 seconds, Dave reverses it and ends up in the mount for a brief period of time against just an absolute savage Matt Hughes. And you didn't get the decision at this point.
Yeah, no, I didn't win that. He didn't come. I mean, he didn't do, in all honesty, he didn't do a lot of damage. He did hit me a few times hard, I think basically off the clinch. And I think early on in the fight, I got a thumb in the eye, and by the whatever part of the fight I had both contacts out. So I think by the end of it, or a good part of half the fight, I was blind, which that also probably didn't add to it. I mean, that goes. I fought most of my career. I had 20 over 400 vision, so I can't see the big E on the board. So at the point I basically lose my contacts, I'm fighting off a feel. So if you can hit me, I can hit you back. So if that makes any sense.
There was a few times, I should say more than a few, but a half dozen times where Matt's in top position and he's moving, and he just backs completely out because he's worried about Dave's submissions. Like Dave just keeps working submissions, and he's like, you know what? Let me just sit back, reposition a little bit, get another slam, and just try to rinse, repeat, recycle. And it's unfortunate you get the decision. However, this is the event where Dennis Hallman submits Matt with the guillotine in the finals, where, I mean, I think it was like 17 seconds. It was, incredibly shocking.
And fucking, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
And Hallman was like also, he's a large human being at that time. So for a 70-pound weight class. So.
Well, Hallman admitted to us that he roided to get up to that weight class.
He said he was too small for 70, so he needed steroids. That's his words, not ours.
Yeah, I mean, and I was a 70-pounder at that tournament. I don't know necessarily Hallman or Hughes were entirely at that time. Obviously, Matt eventually fought that weight, but Hallman was big. So I recall that. And I think obviously we fought later in another tournament in, was that in Evans?
I think you fought him in Shudo.
You got Shudo Japan.
I fought him in Shudo, but I fought
got
him
it covered.
I got McClure. I fought McClure and Parman. I didn't fight Hallman. Hallman got beat by McClure, and or something in that tournament.
Dave, you're ruining my stories.
That's what I do. I gotta be good at something.
I mean, this is about me, right, Chris?
I'm about ruining good times. So if I can't, I'm not flashy and I can't have fun. I gotta screw it up for everybody else.
Well,
I'm having a great time. I don't know about you.
Oh, fantastic! Because we're right at that fight right now, brother.
There we go.
Challenge 23, April 2nd, 1999. So this is like the brilliance of Monty setting this tournament up. Dave is tournament crazy at this point. I'd like a psyche veil personally at this time. He puts Dennis Hallman on the opposite side of the bracket, so it would make a compelling final rather than having him fight first, which is incredibly smart. The problem is Ken Parman wins a 15-minute decision, and Ken Parman at the time is only 2-0. Dennis Hallman's 15-2-1. It's like a really good fight. Ken played mostly
sure?
defense.
McClure won. McClure beat Hallman, didn't he?
Yeah.
I fought Parman. I beat Parman.
Oh shit!
McClure was a really good grappler, or he was a Megatons school out of Arizona. He was also not really big, but he had great endurance, and he kept on going at him. And I think
you're right. That was your record. You're 15-2-1. Parman's 2-0. You win a 15-minute decision. McClure upsets Hallman with a split decision. McClure was 4-0. There was great scrambles on the ground.
I mean, I can't comment on who won the fight because I just remember it was a back and forth and good. Hallman was the favored in the situation. McClure didn't go on to fight a lot. I think he had one. What's the kid's name? He had one win against somebody, I can't recall who, that went on and I think fought in the UFC. But yeah, so that's what I know.
But you knocked him out. You stopped him at 4:45.
Yeah, we ended up in a scramble. The scramble went into a triangle. The triangle ended up, he stacked. I mounted him in triangle, and basically I was punching down at him. So at that point it was done.
Were you a little disappointed? Were you kind of looking forward to fighting Dennis Hallman winning against Matt Hughes winning that tournament? That was obviously what you thought you were going to fight at the end.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't know if I was disappointed I won. It's a tournament. I didn't cry. I didn't cry too much, but I mean, maybe it's been a little bit more satisfying if I fought Dennis, but I went home with the belt and he didn't.
Yeah.
And,
Good point.
You know, and it was actually, if I recall right, it was a pretty, you know, the finish was a decent like highlight deal if it would have been a highlight time, because it was like a weird rolling into position. I can't remember punching him and his nose blew up on me. So,
the crazy thing about this is you and Hallman, we've mentioned it already, and it's not just Monty Cox that's trying to match you guys up. An organization known as Shudo, obviously world renowned in Japan, flies both of you guys in to fight at their event. Two very high end competitors, and you know, I mean, you in the pre-fight interview, you had said that you planned on standing with them.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would have to go back in the interview, but I would have imagined, I thought I probably had better striking with him than him at the time. So I think I mean, I'd have to go back and watch the fight. I haven't seen it for ages.
I mean, you won a decision, obviously. Yeah. And it seemed like, I don't know, you had a little bit of jet lag or something, because it seemed like you were not real comfortable staying. Like, hey, I plan on standing. You go out there, and within a couple exchanges, you shoot for a takedown.
Yeah. So that's distinct possibility. It might have been a little bit, you know, it's like, I don't know. Was that one of my first long flights? Probably, I would imagine.
Was Plus, this one of your first flights for a fight ever?
I'd have to go back on the record and see, but possibly one of my first ones.
Was.
And it was Japan, and it's 24 hours. Plus, I was sightseeing.
Here's a question too. Go ahead.
So I'm basically walking probably, and I'm like, there's always question you end up in Tokyo again. So I'm walking 5-6 miles before the fight every day, walking and looking at shit. So
yep. Now, do you remember probably not like how far in advance they brought you out? Because I know for my times in Japan, it was always good if they brought you like 5 days in advance, because your first 3 days you feel terrible and like I'm not gonna be ready. I got jet lag, and then if they bring you in the day before, you got no chance.
Shudo was pretty quick. I think they got I think rings and stuff. They did interviews and stuff, so they bring you a little bit earlier. But if I remember, Shudo was pretty early. So, and I remember I think McClure had a split decision loss against Paul Rodriguez, who I think fought in the UFC eventually, and beat like a young Masvidal at some point.
Yeah.
But
how did that fight come about?
That's Dave's right on with Paul Rodriguez, and Paul actually also knocked out Hallman on my show.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, definitely a high level guy. But take it away, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, how did you land that fight?
In Shudo?
In Shudo, how did I land the fight? I think came up through Monty or something. And is that pre Nikau or when?
Nikau was right after.
Right after, okay. So, and that would be my second flight. So, I think I probably landed it because they were wanting to use Hallman. I think probably Hume had some leverage in Japan. Maybe they wanted to see the fight because they're trying to push Hallman forward. So they made the matchup. That makes any sense. And I think Hughes was on that card too, and Hughes ended up fighting
Gono. Gono.
Yeah. So I think it was a travel package a little bit. I mean, you can pay for one cornerman and man here and whatever. So, and everybody gets to go.
You had Greg Nelson in your corner, and Matt Hume was in Hallman's corner. Mm-hmm. It was a fun fight to watch, especially knowing the history behind it. From there, on September 7th, 1999, you fight on Super Brawl 13, TJ Thompson's card. You're in Honolulu. You're at Jutaro Nikau.
Yeah, and Nikau was tough. I mean, Nikau, I think he had wins over Yuki Kondo, Shina Aoki.
Aoki's a stud.
Pat Miletich, he beat Pat Miletich, caught him in a triangle. Tony D'Souza, a few other people. He was a southpaw, and he had like it was a weird way of like setting up his body kick across the body, because Pat had warned me about it and said, yeah, it hits hard, and I can say that it definitely did hit hard. So, but he was definitely a tough dude, and I would imagine I was not favored to win. I think he had at some point been the Shudo champion. I think he had lost it, but he had at some point, I think, held the Shudo title maybe for a little bit. So, but
yeah,
tough. And he had just beat the UFC world champion in Honolulu, so or previously. So, I mean, that was, and I think I would have been. I don't think it was until I beat LaVerne the second time that you would have saw me in any of the ratings, in all honesty. Or maybe it popped into him with I might have popped into it with Nikau, like on Fight World, Miguel, and then into like Full Contact Fighter. But I don't think it might not have been until LaVerne the second time, because I would see these guys in the welterweights and I'm like, I beat him, and they're, and obviously for a second, like Nikau, I think popped into number one in the world, and so theoretically I beat the number one guy in the world. But when I beat him, it became a fluke, right? So,
well, the one there's two interesting things about that fight. Your corner, you've got Matt Hume in your corner. How does that happen?
I think I had some weird. I don't know if I had a corner, and we just, and because I mean that's
the number one
before.
guy in the world without a corner. Okay.
Yeah. I think I was bringing possibly would have had I was supposed to have a girl come with me. That didn't happen. It was just a fucking mess. So I think might even have been part of the reason I took the fucking fight. Was this chick was like, oh, we wanted to go to Hawaii. So I'm like,
yeah, smooth move, Dave. That's absolutely.
So I'll fight the number one guy in the world and go to Hawaii, and then she fucking cunted out on me. So whatever, my charming personality.
Well, the thing about the cow too is the cow was kind of like a Shudo secret weapon too, because they had Sakurai as their big star, like that was, and the cow was a guy that only guys like us know about. You know what I mean? But yeah, dangerous guy, like you said, when he beat Miletich, he was on everybody's radar. He actually has something in common with you two guys, and he's made the trip to Evansville. He fought Steve Berger there.
Oh, gotcha. Huh. Yeah, I would have to.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, the other odd thing about that fight is all three judges are from Japan, and you got a unanimous decision. Like, that's as hard as it gets.
Yeah, no shit.
Did you dominate the fight?
Well, I won the fight. I think I was on top, and I think Tank Abbott was in the crowd because I had won the fight and everybody knew I won the fight. And I let Nikau up to bang on the feet right before like 30 seconds left. And people are like, what how stupid are you? Like, because you won. And so I let him up and finished hard. But I'm like, I guess Abbott was in the crowd cheering it on because I let him up with like 30 seconds. And from everybody I talked to, I had won the fight at that point. So they were happy for the entertainment, but not necessarily happy for my fight IQ or my intelligence for taking the chance.
Yeah,
Nikau's dangerous. He wasn't like a great puncher, but he had a finishing like body kick. In all honesty, he knocked the wind out of me. I don't know how many times I've ever even had the wind knocked out of me.
Did that happen in the last 30 seconds? He knocked the wind out of you earlier in the fight?
No, we're early on, and maybe that I probably ended up wrestling. I think I caught it and took him down, but I was like, fuck. And then and on top of the fact I'd been warned about it. So
yeah. So at this point, are you kind of a little bit bigger? I mean, are you up to like 180?
I'm getting a little bit bigger. Like there was no 55 obviously at whatever time. So for a while I'm eating like 6-7 meals, 8 meals a day trying to gain weight. I think it would be the next like best of the best where I'm starting to gain weight. I think by Nakao I was getting bigger. Yeah, I would have been getting bigger, but it was a process of, it doesn't happen overnight. So unless you hook up with Hallman. Then
I'm going to help you. Yeah, let's hook up with Hallman. Chris, I'm going to help you with that loaded question. Exactly how big did you think right after that fight?
After what?
After you fought Nakao.
Like how
right
big?
After. Like right before November 21st, 1999 at Extreme Challenge 29, when you fought my favorite fighter, Chris Lytle, in the first round of a tournament. I want to see if he missed weight, Chris. I'm trying, buddy.
No, I did. I actually did. I never missed weight. The only weight I would have ever missed would have been Kuwait. However, I was probably the only one. I was like 2.5 pounds over, and the day of weigh-ins, I had a scale in my room, and I was the only one that had the scale. I went down, and eventually we were told there wasn't going to be weigh-ins, so I'm like, I'm not gonna hold weight anymore. I wasn't cutting a lot. This is an 85-pound tournament at the time, and I'm not big. I was trying to get it. I was trying to eat and be as big as I could, because I'm going a week and a half later to a no weight class tournament in Tokyo. So it's kind of like halfway in between. And that was a tournament with Nagara, Kanahari, Couture, Overeem, brother.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Who set you up with that one?
No, sounds like a Monty special.
I beat the first half of the tournament. Was I fought Traven, Roberto Traven, which was Abu Dhabi heavyweight champion. Right? Yeah, he fought Mir, not the best MMA guy in the world, but he's still 230, 240, 6'4".
Jeez.
So, and he's a world champion in jiu-jitsu. So, I won that for the first part of it, and I beat Sakata and him, I think, for the first bracket. And then the second part of it was, and we got off track. Sorry.
No. Keep going. We're second to rewind.
The second half of it was Kanahari and would have been Nagara. Kanahari, which this is like basically 10-12 days or 10 to 12 days after I arrived back from Kuwait. So like I said, ribs are fucked up, hands fucked up, can't close my hand. I can basically by the time I'm basically landing on the ground, I can kind of still start to close my hand. I beat him stem to stern for the first 10-minute round. I think there's another 5. They put it into overtime. He would have won advantage the second part of the 5 probably, but the first 10 I should have been probably a 10-8. Obviously, wow. Japan, it goes to overtime. He hits me off the ropes, sitting on the heels. I fall, hit my ass. I immediately pop up and punch him, and I'm punching him. The ref breaks it and calls it. Yeah. So I'm like,
Japan.
I'm like, yeah. I'm like, what are you? What? I'm like, I just hit him. You can't call the fight. Like, yeah, I mean, maybe it was. Yeah. I probably shouldn't have been fighting anymore at that point, anyways, because my hands fucked up, my ribs are fucked up, and at this point, I got to fight Nagara. So, but at the same time, it was still ridiculous. It's like, come on.
Let me help you out, Mike. We appreciate the story. We're probably going to go back to it, but the reason we got there is something I could have helped you out with, Mike. And that's Dave Menne doesn't not make weight. He always makes weight. That's one of those things that we always heard about on the circuit.
Well, my guy was 175 that night. That's all I'm saying.
Come on, me.
That's you, Chris. Absolutely.
I don't even know what I weighed. I don't even know what the weight. I don't even know what the tournament was. Was it 80? Was it 75? I don't know.
I think Phyllis may have put you in a tournament above your weight class.
She would never do such a thing.
In all honesty, I don't think Chris. I was bigger than Chris at that time. So, I mean, that was.
That's why I didn't remember. I didn't even know what the weight class was looking back at it. I was told to go there and I did.
I think you would, if you walked in, you were 75, because I'd gotten bigger, but I made weight. From my understanding, the first tournament, the first best of the best, neither Hallman nor Hughes made weight. That's what I was told. And I was told that by, obviously not Monty, but I was told that by Hallman. So Hallman said he weighed at 95. He said he was like 85. Whether that's true or they were trying to start shit, I don't know. They did tell me that. I can confirm that.
They could have been kicking it off.
Well, I mean, if you freaking look at them compared to me,
they're huge.
A lot
they're
bigger.
freaking huge. Yeah.
Well, let's set the table. If you wouldn't mind, let me just kind of frame this for the people at home. So Extreme Challenge 29 is an 8-man tournament, and it features 6 UFC veterans in it.
Man.
Yeah. Dave, your first fight, like in the tournament, is against Chris Lytle. Mm-hmm. Chris, how do you remember that fight going?
It was a rough one, man. I'm not gonna lie. I remember, like I said, I felt like he was really strong. I remember thinking that, and I wasn't really. I mean, I was fighting really for fun. I've been training about a year and a half. I started in '98, beginning of it, and I loved doing it, and I was having fun. But I'd fight over in Japan, I believe, by this time. And I went. I never lost in America. And I remember I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna go to this tournament. I fought in Japan. I can beat these guys." And I just remember being on bottom a lot and having trouble getting up and on. I remember I thought we kind of beat the piss out of each other. I mean, I know I had black eyes at the end, and I remember I felt like I hit you with a couple of really good punches on our feet, and I was like, man. But I felt like I lost the fight. Huh?
You hit me with an up kick. It was probably.
Is that what? I can't even remember.
It was right around the time it would have been right around the time I started trying to stomp you. But yeah, you hit me with an up kick. So that's where the stomps were legal.
Yeah.
So we got into some tussle in the corner or whatever. But that came into being actually later on, because it was in the second round of the fight, LaVerne hit me in the same damn spot. So I looked by third. If I was going to fight, he was in the finals. I looked like fucking Quasimodo, literally. Okay. Like I was the rest of the fucking fight. Rest of the time, I'm walking around telling people, because they doctor wouldn't let me fight at that point for the finals. So I'm walking around fucking Hayward Casino going, I'm human, whatever the quote.
I'm not an animal.
I'm not an animal. I'm not an animal.
Now, I remember at one point after that fight, somebody's like, man, I don't know if he didn't like you or something, but he was more aggressive than normal. He was trying to hurt you. So it was good. I enjoyed bringing that out in people. But I know at one point after that, Monty kind of said, hey, Chris, be ready, because I don't know if he's going to fight the next round versus LaVerne Clark. And then he came back later and said he is going to. Was there any thought of you not fighting? Because I didn't know. If anything, you heard it had to be your hand on my head. That's all I remember.
I think if that would have been, it would have possibly been, it would have had to do with the, I think I would have felt fine. It would have had to do with the doctor looking at the swelling. So from the up kick. So I think it was like right around here. And then, like I said, by the time, I wasn't hurt, I don't think my hand, I don't recall my hands. I would have still had adrenaline. So I would have been fine. Like I wanted to fight. He was in the finals of it. And the doctor just said no. Now, was that the best idea for me to do? Probably not. Because
I mean, even going to the second round, I remember LaVerne's first fight was like 18 seconds or 10. I don't know. It was something really quick. And you could just tell going out there, like, I felt like you and I had fought in a pretty good war, because we were both, you were tired, and he was not.
It was back and forth. I mean, it was scrappy. I had a lot of top position. We had a decent amount of exchanges on the feet. I think towards the end, I might have caught you pretty hard against the fence.
I don't remember, man.
Yeah, Chris, you were bleeding. Yeah.
I didn't remember. Was I? Okay.
Yeah. And Dave, when you fought LaVerne Clark, he was grabbing the fence constantly. And LaVerne he's a rough dude. And like if you're a pro wrestling fan, he's more of like an ECW guy. He's like one of the garbage wrestlers, but he hit you hard. And when you came out of the ring, Monty you could see a younger Monty Cox interviewing everybody as they come out of the ring. And Dave, you were about to start swelling all over yourself, and you clearly had a pumpkin head coming. Like you were about to look deformed based on the totality of the punishment that LaVerne, put on.
So it was mostly one right hand, I think, in all honesty, and it was right on the spot that Chris hit me with the up kick. It was already in the process of starting. The road was ahead of me already. If that makes any sense.
But then you submitted him, correct?
Yeah, I submitted him. Yeah.
You got it was a rear naked choke or something. You get his back.
I hit him in. Well, I had actually, whether this actually happened or not, I had him in a heel hook, and I hit him with a cross or a jab, and it kind of either stumbled him or dropped him, or his ankle was hurt from the earlier heel hook. What was the actual reality? I can't say. I know I had a decent level crank on him at one point, and I think I hit him, that stumbled him, and then I ended up finishing with a guillotine, or he slipped. I don't know, whatever.
Interesting. So LaVerne Clark goes on to fight Matt Hughes in the finals, where Chris, you have pointed out that LaVerne gets a takedown and possibly wins that first round against Hughes.
He won the first round.
And, Matt ends up winning his second tournament for Monty. You then go on, I get my next fight on record is May 13th, 2000, WEF 9, title fight against Pele Landis.
Pele Landis,
which at this time...
he's now number one in the world.
He's now number one in the world. Yeah, this is not your first number one guy in the world that you fought. That's correct.
Yeah. So, Pele just beat Pat and a couple other people, I believe. I think he went on to he fought Liddell. Lost to Liddell, but lost a decision. I think he knocked him down twice.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if I saw the total fight. I heard that he knocked him down twice. I heard that he lost a decision. I think what I was hearing was that Chuck out wrestled him basically. So
never seen that before.
That's in Brazil.
It's out there. I can't know that. I can't say that I've watched the whole fight. I've seen. I think I saw a clip of it at some point. So, and then who else? Who else did Pele fight?
Well, Pele had the legendary fights in IVC with like Johil de Oliveira. And he was one of those guys with
Eric Smith. Eric Smith too.
And the pedigree.
Oh, he beat Shlemenko too. Alexander Shlemenko, and he beat Hughes.
Yeah, in
Kuwait. And Evangelista Santos, he beat him also early on. So he's a dangerous dude.
Oh yeah,
Vanderlei Silva, and that's his team. Is Vanderlei Silva, Rafael Cordero, and those guys shoot box exactly. Yeah. So Dave, I was a judge for that fight.
Lovely.
So you can yell at me now if you need to.
No, he won the decision. Well, in that fight, how did you handle? I mean, obviously there was a lot of hype behind him, and you keep winning by luck. It's certainly not by design. And
no, never. And the close fights are lucky too.
Yeah, what was your approach going into this based on his reputation?
Off of what I said, I think they were asking me beforehand. They're like, "Aren't you scared of this? He's got knees and elbows." And I think my response is, I was like, "I got knees and elbows."
Yeah, that's exactly what you said. I remember that.
Yeah.
So, but I was like, "Yeah, I got knees and elbows." I looked at so this is the advantage of having me see a fight, is I looked at what he did well, and I actually worked on like the way I set up my tie kick. I kick hard, or at that point juncture in my life, I kick really hard. So instead of like kick stepping off or stepping, I developed so that I could be able to kick without the step. And that was to try to get hit because he charges in on his cross to try to push him off to the side and to stop he's dangerous coming forward. He's explosive and he's a finisher. And one of that things was trying to get him hitting under the ribs to keep him from like lunging in and hitting his cross. The other side of it is I worked a jumping knee bar, basically, because he's got really good hips. He's hard to take down. how am I going to take this guy down with not using a lot of energy and conserving my energy? So I worked on a jumping knee bar, because if I don't get the knee bar, if I get the knee bar, I finish him. If I don't get the knee bar, I get a top position and I don't use a lot of energy. And it's unconventional, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
So it's an aspect of, there was a decent amount of strategy going into the fight. Like I used the kick a certain way. And then the other part of it's just natural thuggishness. Dirty boxing, the dirty boxing on the inside and stuff like that would just take it on the fly. So I know.
How was Jamie Levine as a promoter?
Well, Jamie was absolutely pissed. He was livid because that was going to be his guy. So he was mad. I think if he could have figured a way to take the belt away from me, I think he probably at that point would have. So, and like Matt Hughes and Pele almost got to do it in the back because Matt kept on going to Pele, who's champion now, and Pele was like irate. So
what was Matt doing?
Matt was
making fun of him.
He was antagonizing Pele. So.
Now, was this the same weekend that the alleged prostitute where he refused? Is that this weekend?
Yeah. Same deal.
Pele, what do you know about that story? So we had Alex Davis.
I just heard that some prostitute possibly stole something from Pele. Pele ran the car down and possibly punched through the window. Some sort.
I think it was a jumping knee.
Yeah, I have no idea. So my fucking cat toys went out.
So we had Alex Davis on. He's a big time manager from Brazil, one of the judo coaches from American Top Team, and he talked about Pele. It's like the old man that doesn't know that he should be kind of keeping certain things quiet. He tells this amazing story about Pele that is just mind-boggling. He told us we're not allowed to clip it, which is why it's not clipped. I highly suggest you go watch that Alex Davis interview because it is phenomenal.
Yeah.
He had a prostitute try to rob him and he ran after her naked. That's true.
And tried to explain to the police, like, no, you don't understand. She tried, she's not giving me what I paid for. And they're like, you can't tell the police that you didn't.
Yeah,
you didn't get paid.
I don't care.
He couldn't understand it. Why this is a deal, a verbal agreement. They just couldn't get it.
Yeah, he didn't realize he was in the U.S. So
yeah,
I think he's up in New York now, isn't he? Or something? I think he probably calmed down a little bit through the years.
Yeah, especially if his family's asking us to take that clip down.
That's what happened. That's what happened. Yeah. So, Dave, I only wanted to take you to the 2000s because your career is just so enormous, and what we usually like to do is we try to break people's careers up into certain times and segments and really dig in on them. But I'd really like to talk to you, if you've got time, about the Warriors War in Kuwait.
We can hit that. I think I have about 20 minutes or 20% of my charge left on my phone. But it's a Warriors War with Carlos Newton, Mahamadov, for me, running, and Kareem to the finals. Obviously, Hughes was in the tournament, and Pele. So at the time, I think at this point, we are all in the top 6 in the world. So Matt Hughes, Carlos Newton, Pele, and me. I'm probably in like the 5 or 6 on the list. And Kareem is an Abu Dhabi grappling champion, had an out with Arona, which they had a basically no point match. And they, I think Kareem like slaps him or hits him, and then the Sheik kicks him out of Abu Dhabi. So, and I think the Kuwaiti Sheik that put on this tournament is president of Kuwait now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was I remember looking at a news article a while back, and I'm like, oh, dude's president now. That's kind of funny.
So let's take you back, and as Mike usually does, let's put some framework around this. First of all, Kareem, when they set this tournament
the finals,
up,
Miguel.
No, but I understand that. But when they set the tournament up, Ricardo Laborio was in it.
Yeah.
Originally, and Kareem, who is Kareem Barkalaev, was advertised as Kareem Allah. And everybody's like, well, who could Kareem Allah be? 0-0 in MMA.
Yeah,
and you know,
he was converted. He was converting to Islam and moving to Kuwait and teach there. And he was in Kuwait for 3 to 4 weeks before any of us got there, from what I was told, or a couple months actually. We got in like a day and a half to 2 days before the flight.
That's fair.
Me and Hughes were passed out on the locker room floor before our fight school game, sleeping basically because we were still so fucking jet lagged, and there was no weigh-ins. So Kareem's probably 205, 210. They have another dude that they were gonna have fight Omri, that's from Russia, that was 240. Like McCarthy's like, no, like, well, there was gonna be no weigh-in. So and they said they didn't have a scale, but I brought a scale. So Pat's like, go get your scale.
What were you supposed to weigh at? What was it supposed to be at? Do you know?
It was going to be a 185 pound tournament. So, I mean, which is at that point, not a big, it's not horrible cut for me, but it's still, I'm halfway into trying to be as possibly heavy as I can for the fight in Japan and keeping my weight down for this. So it's like, whatever, but like I said, I'm still probably a 70 pounder at that time if I'm actually cutting. Kareem's 205, I think, or 210.
Did he step on a scale?
Yeah, we eventually made everyone get on the scale. And the other Russian that was like 230 that was supposed to fight Omri, we're like, nah, that's not going to happen. So, and then everybody else was obviously at this point not on weight because we've known for like 4 hours that there's not going to be a weigh-in. So everybody that would have been making weight is drinking water, or the people that normally wouldn't have made weight are still not making weight, if that makes any sense. I would have made weight. I mean, me waking up in the morning, I was a couple pounds, like 3 pounds, 4 pounds over. So I came downstairs to look for the sauna, and then around at whatever time I was told there probably wasn't going to be a weigh-in.
So they start him with Carlos Newton, where it's 1 round, 10 minutes, back and forth on the ground, trading submission attempts, and you land a monster head kick towards the end of the round. And, with John McCarthy as referee and Bruce Buffer as the ring announcer, it did have a UFC type feel to it. And obviously you win that decision.
Yeah. This is another thing about that is part of the background of this. This is in the rules meeting for the scoring on this and this is why when we go back, it was typified that it's damage. Grappling positions and stuff like that were to be considered, but it was the amount of strikes and significant hits that was to be scored for the fights. If we look at that, Carlos had some grappling positions, but even without the head kick, all the significant strikes were but from me. Every basic, he maybe hit me once during that fight, twice.
Yeah. It's still, it's
a good fight. And
you've exerted a lot of energy too.
Carlos was a great competitor, and he had different positions on me and did well. But yeah, and obviously that's a lot. He's ranked in the world, and it was a decently long fight.
Yeah. So then you go up against Shamir Meromegov, who is 40-2. That's his listed record. In
kickboxing?
They just listed him as 40-2. I don't know about MMA.
I think he was a kickboxer. He was tough. Like, dude, all around.
He was a savage.
I think he was a Russian champion kickboxer. If he at 55 would be a modern day 55 UFC level competitor. Like, he was tough. And that was like one of the situations where I had to stay, like, immediately change what the fuck I was doing. Because all of a sudden I'm like, pop, pop. Like, he hits me and I'm like, okay. So I think I started ranging out with a jab. Or you trying to establish a jab and then break distance and use knees. If that makes any sense. Because early on,
he had an early style that was more modern today than it was then, and incredibly difficult to deal with. And he's got wins over Pele and Gilbert Yvel. Well, Gilbert Yvel bit him out of frustration and got disqualified. Chris, I've been trying to track Gilbert Yvel down. He's reading my messages. we're going to get Gilbert Yvel on the show, and I'm going to lose my mind. But he had a very modern day type.
Yeah, he had great timing,
Yeah.
and back and forth as far as like moving back and forth, and then timing his hooks and his crosses. And I remember like early on getting zapped a couple times and going, oh fuck.
Yeah.
So do you think maybe it's time to get this guy to the ground? Would you ever?
I mean, I think what I ended up doing is I tried to use my jab. I think I started to. I have a good jab when I concentrate on it, and I think I started trying to use a jab to keep him out of range a little bit, and I might have angled out a little bit more if I was thinking. And then whenever he would close in, I think I was using clinch and knees, and I was using some unconventional knees where like open to a curved knee and then straight up to the head. So I'd hit him off to the side and hit some weird angles on the knees to try to basically keep him off balance. And I think eventually it probably got him down. I think
that was a hard fight, dude. That was a hard fight. Yeah, it was a coin toss.
I think it was the aspect of knees to the head off of the clinch that probably gave me the decision. And I think I might have got top position once. I would have to go back and look at it.
Yeah, that was Chris. It's a coin toss. Like it's and for Dave to get that decision at this point is even harder because he's in kind of enemy territory. And for the finals, Miguel had mentioned him. He fight Kareem Barkalaev, who I don't know how this guy wasn't a world champion. Like the way he fought, maybe there's a weight difference, maybe there's jet lag, maybe there's all these other different factors that you had mentioned. He looks pound for pound the best in the world, too, in my opinion, at that time.
Well, just a little background with him. In the Arab world, Uzbeks from Uzbekistan have that rough neighborhood kind of. So this guy was a rough customer from the start.
He was running around. He was probably a knuckle breaker. His friends and him were probably a knuckle breaker.
Both those guys, money collectors. And a little side note, both of them died shortly after this tournament.
Yeah,
really?
I mean, there were wars down there, and like
Civil
I
War.
said, these guys were rough characters. I think Barkalaev was the kind of guy. I think Mike's right. He was probably a guy that should have been ranked at some point, or could have been. But I think he was better with no rules in the street, in whatever he came from. That's what made him really dangerous. Is that this is really nothing compared to where he came from. So I think that's a lot. That's a lot to face, as well as the weight disadvantage and the fact that they had him there for a month warning. And the story he told about him in Abu Dhabi is true. He was fighting Ricardo Arona, and Arona, they were clinching behind the head, and at some point it got to be like they were slapping, and there was a slap exchange, and I think that the two were prevented from fighting. The Sheik was asking at least for some type of forgiveness from Kareem, and Kareem said, "I did nothing wrong," and they put him with his shorts on. As he was that day, they put him on an airplane and deported him.
Yeah,
that's the story. And so
So was he the guy, Miguel, that gave the finger to the Sheik, and they were going to cut his arm off?
I think the finger was to Arona, but that whole exchange he was the Sheik's boy. That was the Sheik's team.
Arona.
So no, Kareem. Kareem lived in Abu Dhabi. He was in Abu Dhabi, which is why he was deported. He was part of their team. And I remember Arona is also a rough kid from Brazil. They were going to fight. And I remember one of the Brazilian guys screaming, I don't, like from the other side of the ring running, because he understood the Arab world that he was in, telling Arona, sit the fuck down and don't get into a fight. And Arona sat down and controlled himself. He's with Sperry too, who's a pretty calm customer too, right? Yeah. Kareem didn't have that. Kareem didn't have that piece to do that, and he lost his job. And then he winds up in Kuwait, hired by another elite Sheik of that. So he's traveling in real high-end territory.
He was in the process, from what I heard, in the process of converting to Islam maybe he was already, but we were told that he was converting to Islam, moving to Kuwait. He was brought in early, and obviously this was going to be his
coming out
wedding.
party. Yeah.
It's homecoming. Yeah. It's
basically.
quinceañera, Miguel.
So then, so it was an interesting deal.
Take us through that.
Some of
fight.
us were concerned. Some of us were concerned about the Russians afterwards. Obviously, they mobbed the cage after the fight a little bit, and they were, we had Pat, Matt, and other people, and we were. I think eventually we got back to the hotel, or we were at the place, and Monty's like, "You got to give us a different hotel because we don't want to be in the hotel with these guys." I mean, it's one thing. It's one thing to have to deal with it, but then there's also, we're in Kuwait. If you get in a fight or you get criminal charges or whatever, I think it's 6 months basically till you're basically in a court. Are we gonna have 3 or 4 Russians that come to your, or Bekistan or whatever, popping up at your front door, and we're like, whatever. The Brazilians were backing us basically because they were just as pissed at the way that
Russians.
the tournament went down as we were. But I mean, what's the point of taking the chance?
Yeah. What did you win for that tournament?
Gold belt.
Like a solid gold belt?
Was supposed to be. Well, I was told it was gold. I eventually had to check. It was not. That would have, because it'd be like freaking $200,000 right now. Or
Yeah,
more,
perfect.
Considering gold prices, because it was supposed to be $20,000 belt with that, or $20,000 of gold on the belt. Years later, at the prices then compared to what the prices are now, it'd be about $200,000 in gold.
Did it look like actual gold?
Yeah. I got it somewhere. Send you a picture. So I mean, and parts of it did, and parts of it looked like metal. So it's maybe gold plated. I get to have it checked again. And there was a $60,000 purse. So
Nice.
But great, especially for the time. If we get any farther forward, it would be over $1 million tournament. So
Yep.
So it would be.
So Miguel, who was the promoter of that event that gave him the fake gold belt? Do you know?
Apparently, he's the president of the country, Mohammed bin
No,
Jaber.
it'd be the dude that organized it. Would have been from Syria. I mean, the sheik had nothing to do with the organization of it. It was a guy, somebody from Syria. We were initially told that, I think Monty told the guy that the sheik and the other people that he overcharged them because he looked at the stuff. And somebody had made a joke that he might be taking a ride to the desert. So,
I wonder if they gave him money to have a gold belt made and he just pocketed the cash. He goes, "Oh yeah, this is a gold belt."
Or he got the gold and then took it.
Or they had 2 belts.
Yeah, I don't.
Depends on who won it.
Yeah, it depends on who won it. If Barkalaev won, they would have given it to him. And the caveat to that story also is Barkalaev, you had a lot of fight time, like in this tournament. Your durability and grit absolutely showed through just how tough and consistent you were in your fighting. And Barkalaev was so frustrated with you that he kept grabbing the fence, and he had 2 points taken away. Had those 2 points not been taken away?
He had 1 point taken away.
Was it 1 point? Okay.
1 point.
Let me line it up a little bit even further, just because, Dave described top 6 guys in this tournament, except for Kareem's opponents, who were from Spain, and I give him credit. Dursu Lerma became a good fighter later on, but I think he was all of 18 years old. And to bring an 18-year-old in from Spain to Kuwait to fight Kareem Barkalaev in the first round, John McCarthy should have said no to that one too.
It's a happy meal.
Yeah, it was a happy meal. I had in the first round. So it was quite a interesting experience. A lot of fights, and I think it was the second round fight. I actually popped my ribs in the second round, or the second round of the fights, which you got adrenaline. There isn't that much, but it's still not fun.
Right, how soon after the event did you go and get a check to see if it was real gold?
I mean, a long time afterwards. I guess I had somebody go bring it to their jeweler, and they said it wasn't. So I guess.
So this was like years later?
Yeah. I was just
Oh
hanging
my
on to
God.
it.
Can you imagine how many people yeah, it's real gold. Yeah, won this in Kuwait.
It was supposed to be. So I'm not lying. I'm not purposely lying. So
No,
but
no, we believe you.
No, the thing about it that like Dave said, it actually, it's a hit in the wallet too. You know what I mean? It's like, Dave may have put that thing away thinking, even 20,000 in
Retirement
gold is 20,000 in gold. Let me put that away, buy a car in a few years. Then he goes and friggin' gets
actually,
it
it kind of came to that because I had been dealing with some not feeling well or sick and wanting medical bills originally when I went and got it checked. So, and so
Scumbags. All right, Dave, we're winding up the interview. If we could throw a couple questions at you, we have a couple routine ones we like to do. Have you looked into the psilocybin studies in regards to functionality in your brain and how they kind of correlate together of a medicinal value?
Like telomeres or whatever you're talking about?
Telomeres is a little different. It's with the plasticity in your brain.
Yeah,
like
I've looked at neuroplasticity and some of the things that help with that. So I don't know in particular the study you're speaking of. So, but
it's quite popular in the fight world right now.
mushrooms, basically.
Yeah, people dealing with CTE.
like microdosing on mushrooms. It creates greater neural connections in your frontal cortex. Helps people with PTSD and some other things. Yeah, I've read about that. And there's like lithium orotate and some other things that are also possibly good for neuroplasticity. I mean, that's part of the deal with like even.
Have you tried it?
I can't speak on that.
Okay, my man.
My man, smart.
But Dave, let me ask you. We know 50 Fight Club member, a lot of fights, a lot of stuff. How many concussions do you think you got in general? Was it something because you mentioned it in the interview, and I wanted to bring it up. You fought with contact lenses. Now that's just stunning, and to the point where at some point, and I think in the UFC you weren't allowed to use your contact lenses, and you hadn't gotten your op. So take us through some of that, and how many concussions?
I think I must have slipped through the gaps with the optometrist or whatever when they did the eye study, because even early into the UFC, I had my contacts. So I guess no one necessarily asked. I mean, if I went to pass the eye requirements for most commissions or boxing commissions, wouldn't have rolled me up.
We should just get the LASIK. You ever thought about getting LASIK?
No, I do. I got PRK eventually. But you can't fight without LASIK either. So you need to get PRK because the LASIK does an incision. But it wasn't until, way bit later that I ended up getting PRK. And if I would have got the LASIK early on, that would have probably disqualified me from fighting. I guess we could have got probably through the optometrist or whatever, or somehow falsified the aspect that I had LASIK. But the incision on the aspect of the eye is supposedly structurally, there wasn't enough data on whether there was a structural issue with the incision done on the eye for LASIK, where PRK is a process of reshaping. So the PRK does not
cut your eye. Yeah, I believe you. Yeah.
So
it's not compromising the stability or the buttressing effect of the lens. So.
Gotcha. So, but concussions, Dave. I mean, you fought a lot. Is that something that you worry about, or have you had, or are you feeling good, or obviously you're taking care of yourself now more than you did when you were a kid.
Yeah. I guess we'll have to see. Right? Maybe there was new things in and in Australia, because part of the issue with concussions over time is the plaques that form theoretically. And there was some new therapies using sound waves, actually, for the process of breaking them up in mice. So it was effective in mice and shown to basically clear those things up. The process would be then to see if that would affect the structure in the brain, and how that would affect humans. but I initially read an article a while back that is possibly saying some good things about sound wave therapy for the process of some of that for like frontal cortex and other things like that, as far as the possible trauma. The fact that the question is like, if I was in a boxing gym boxing all the time, I would think I would have probably taken more damage, in all honesty. I mean, I had an ability to show more of hits than probably the actual hits I take. I had the ability to, I bruised pretty easy and swelled up, if that makes any sense. There's a few fights where I would have taken necessarily damage or been concussed. I don't remember after a fight necessarily ever losing where I was, like going out of the ring, or losing memory or time. Like I've been fighters that have been out, not know where they are. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Even Hughes, when he fought Pele, we had to repeat to him where he was and stuff like that. Whatever. I've never experienced that from a fight. That makes sense. I've been out here or there for a couple of seconds, but I've always been back and been aware. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, I've had Keith Wisniewski, for example. He's come up to me and been like, "How did I win?" Literally. So,
well, I mean, so yeah. From that aspect, that can aspect of being hit, which is a problem. There's also not knowing how you win is one thing. There's sometimes you lose things in fights just because you're dealing with tachypsyche or fast time too. I mean, that's an outside of you processing your information basically with adrenaline and other things. So the aspect of everything that you see is not necessarily completely accessed until later, right? Crime scenes and other things and then tell you that also, right? So you're dealing with a stress situation to a certain level. So
no, you're right. Keith, but when they asked you 3 times how they won,
then they know. Then you know they got hit pretty hard.
They got dinged. Dave, it's been so good catching up with you. You know, like I said, I wasn't lying about that Trailblazer stuff. You know, we're talking about a man who's one of a kind for sure. Thank you so much for your time, bro.
Let's have one second, because I did look at one. Like, if we go back, this is from October, basically at the point I lost to Hughes, to all the way to after I beat Kareem and win the UFC title. If we are looking at that as far as only NHB, not MMA, I did not lose for 4 years and 3 months. And that's fighting people
crazy
like
competition.
Shonie Carter, McClure, Dennis Hallman, Macau, LaVerne Clark, Chris Lytle, Anita, Jose, Traven. So that's 16 to 18 level UFC level fights that I did not lose in NHB. In MMA, because some of those are pancreas, and I would contend a few of those I would completely say were janky. One of them I lost, but I was very ill. Like very ill, I was pissing blood half an hour before the fight. So, but just another aspect of trivia that people aren't aware of.
Well, Dave, there's no doubt in my mind that, for nobody's on top forever, but for a very good period of time, it's no doubt you were, just from the magnitude of the people you fought, you were the best in the world at that weight class at the time, without a doubt. So I love putting people on that. Pardon me?
Being the best, one of the best. We were good.
So, you kept knocking off you were number one guys.
Yeah. But that's one thing too, is like even looking at I think, what is that weird fight matrix or whatever, you look at it, and they were putting me for a period of time, and one of the things is pound for pound. Yeah. Part of the reason is they have some weird formula, but it has to go with who you fought, who they fought. And it's like when you go, if you look at I fought people that basically, fought St. Pierre and Sakuraba and Kondo and whoever is Nagara, Couture, Marie Smith, who's a champion. So, that's kind of why that kind of stuff comes up. The reality is, not many people know that reality of the situation. If that makes any sense.
Let me ask you, Dave, as a guy who was first 185-pound champion in the UFC, and all this other trailblazing stuff, do you sort of sometimes feel like you don't get enough credit? Like, does that stick with you sometimes? Are you comfortable? I know you're comfortable in your own skin, but does that?
I mean, I think in the aspect of, like, I would prefer I don't know if I prefer the attention, because I've never been so hot on that. I would prefer the money.
There you go, my man.
But I mean, I do get people like I was shopping for a car around like the country, and people will be like, well, there's a guy that nobody knows. I'm like, well, some people fucking know me, because I get a hold of 3 different car dealerships, one in Florida, one in New Jersey, and the people are like, are you the Dave from fighting? So obviously some people know, yeah. So but aspects of the attention that comes with the aspects of profitability would have been nice.
Yeah, no. Did you think like Dana should call? Like, I mean, does it the Hall of Fame, that sort of stuff? Is that something you think about? Has Dana ever treated you nice?
I mean, the aspect of that they would have to look at the aspects of MMA outside of the UFC, because a huge amount of my accomplishments are not directly in the UFC, and they were necessarily apart from that. So I don't know how he would feel about that. And I, even within that, like some of the other people that would have been considered trailblazers, they were more popular than me. Was I doing the work? I would say, yeah, I was doing the work, but how many people knew about it, if that makes any sense. Mm-hmm. So, and like even some of the like janky shit, like some things come up on my side where I get screwed. Everybody's like, oh, by the way, and the article doesn't come out. I'm like, but if it's somebody else, I wasn't, wasn't getting the support from the people. I'm also from a small state, so as far as early on, as far as even following that stuff. So you can have the people calling up and bitching about that, what this happened, and didn't always get the greatest support here. Even like what I fought, how many years ago I fought Davila, he's a tough dude, beat Spratt and Larson, got no press for it here or anywhere else. So
yeah,
aspects of that for like fighting purposes, it has about making money. That makes life easier, right?
Yeah. No, I think that's about as honest an answer as you can give, really. Because if the other you don't have a huge outward ego that needs stroking, and that's the other part of it. That that's not what attracts you. But if it made your life easier, it's a shame. It's a shame because there's a lot of people in that boat, man. Those trailblazers, man.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So, like I said, Dave, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to keep in touch. We're going to do the UFC years and later on at some point down the line. And I'll send you some links and stuff, and we'll get this out there. Just good time, man.
Sounds like a deal. You guys take care.
Wow, Mike. We just got done here. Dave Menne. We went long again. What are we doing?
I think that's going to be a recurring theme from our first episode all the way to this one.
Yeah, no, it's not bad, because I think we got him definitely talking about stuff. I think he wanted to talk too. I think we got a talkative version too of Dave. So, awesome stuff, man.
Yeah, interesting guy. He's the first 185-pound champion. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. Like when we first started this, essentially it's a historical collection of MMA events and fights that took place from the eyes of the people that participated in them. And you couldn't get a better perspective of the 185-pound division than the guy that's the UFC's first, world champion.
Yeah. And to me too, he's a guy, he's kind of pure fighter. He's a guy who doesn't like to do interviews, and that media marketing stuff, isn't for him. He lets his talking come in the ring. So we're going to get some interesting stories out of him here too. I think because they'll be fresh and they'll be new. And we'll see, the bottom line is I'm going to refer you to the start of the interview where he talked about Phil Straffolino. Phil Straffolino is going to be an asterisk of history, but he had him broken down as a fighter, as his style, how he would adapt to striking, et cetera, et cetera. This guy is a fighter's fighter, a real thinking fighter. So thank you, Dave. Always impressed and never more so than today. Thanks.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.